Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you've ever wanted to try Linux but weren't sure where to start, then this video is for you. Today we're going to explore Linux Mint, one of the most beginner-friendly Linux operating systems available today. We'll first understand what Linux Mint is, why so many people recommend it, how it compares with other operating systems, and finally, we'll download the Linux Mint ISO file that we'll use in the next video to install it in a virtual machine. Before we talk about Linux Mint, let's quickly understand the different operating systems available today. There are three major operating system families that most people use. The first one is Microsoft Windows. Windows is the most widely used operating system in the world. It's commonly used for office work, gaming, education, and everyday computing. Next is Apple macOS. macOS is designed specifically for Apple devices like the MacBook and iMac. It's known for its smooth performance and integration with Apple's ecosystem. Finally, we have Linux. Now here's something many beginners don't know. Linux is not just one operating system. Instead, Linux has hundreds of different versions called Linux distributions or simply Linux distros. Some of the most popular Linux distributions include Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Fedora, Debian, Arch Linux, Pop OS, Zorin OS, Kali Linux. Although all of them are based on Linux, each distribution is designed for different types of users and different purposes. Why Linux Mint over other Linux distributions? Many people ask, why Linux Mint instead of Ubuntu, Fedora, or other Linux distributions? Let's compare them briefly. Ubuntu is one of the most popular Linux distributions. It has a huge community and plenty of software support. However, some beginners find its GNOME desktop environment slightly different from what they're used to. Fedora is another excellent distribution. It includes the latest technologies and newer software versions. But because it focuses on cutting-edge updates, it may require a little more Linux experience. Arch Linux offers maximum customization and flexibility. However, installing and configuring Arch can be challenging for beginners. It's generally recommended for experienced Linux users. Now let's talk about Linux Mint. Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu, so it benefits from Ubuntu's stability and software support. At the same time, it provides a more familiar desktop experience, especially for Windows users. It's lightweight, stable, easy to use, and works well even on older computers. That's why Linux Mint is often recommended as the best Linux distribution for beginners. This page gives us a quick overview of what Linux Mint offers. One thing you'll notice immediately is that Linux Mint is designed to work out of the box. That means after installation, most of the essential applications are already available. Let's look at some of its features. Productivity. Linux Mint comes with LibreOffice pre-installed. You can create documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and even work with PDF files without installing additional software. Web browsing. Firefox comes pre-installed. You can browse websites, watch YouTube, access online learning platforms, and download applications right after installation. Graphic design. If you're interested in graphic design or image editing, Linux Mint supports applications like GIMP, Blender, and Inkscape. Multimedia. Linux Mint supports music, videos, podcasts, and most multimedia formats, so you can start enjoying your media immediately. Gaming. If you're a gamer, Linux Mint also supports Steam and several other gaming platforms, allowing you to play thousands of games compatible with Linux. Why choose Linux Mint? As we scroll further down, Linux Mint highlights several reasons why it's such a popular operating system. The first is out of the box, often called OOTB. This means you don't have to spend hours configuring basic settings after installation. Everything is ready to use. Next is easy to use. The desktop environment is simple, clean, and intuitive, making it ideal for first-time Linux users. Another important advantage is rock-solid stability. Linux Mint receives regular updates and is known for being reliable in everyday use. It is also free and open source. Anyone can download it, use it, modify it, and share it without paying any license fees. Finally, Linux Mint has a large and active community. If you ever face a problem, you'll find thousands of tutorials, forums, and helpful guides available online. Now let's download Linux Mint. Click on the download menu. Here you'll notice 3 different editions available. Cinnamon. The first edition is Cinnamon. This is the flagship edition of Linux Mint. It provides the most modern desktop experience with beautiful animations and additional features. If your computer has good hardware, Cinnamon is an excellent choice. Mate. The second edition is Mate. Mate focuses on simplicity and stability. It uses fewer system resources than Cinnamon while still providing a traditional desktop experience. Xfce. The third edition is Xfce. Xfce is the lightest edition of Linux Mint. It uses less RAM and CPU resources, making it perfect for older computers, low-spec laptops, and virtual machines. For this tutorial, I'll be choosing Xfce because it's lightweight, fast, and performs really well inside a virtual machine. Click on Xfce. After selecting Xfce, we're taken to the download page. Here you'll find multiple download mirrors. So what exactly is a mirror? A mirror is simply another server that stores the exact same Linux Mint ISO file. These mirrors are located in different countries around the world to provide faster download speeds. The ISO file is exactly the same regardless of which mirror you choose. The only difference is the download speed. So choose a mirror that's closest to your location. For example, if you're in India, selecting an Indian mirror usually gives you faster download speeds. Click the mirror and your Linux Mint ISO download will begin. Once the download is complete, we're ready for the next step. Now that the Linux Mint ISO file has finished downloading, we're ready to install it inside a virtual machine. Once VirtualBox opens, click on New. The first thing we need to enter is the machine name. You can give it any name you like. I'll name mine Linux Mint Xfce. Next is the storage location. This is where all the virtual machine files will be stored. If you have another drive with more free space, you can choose that location. Otherwise, you can leave the default path. Now click on the ISO image option and browse to the Linux Mint ISO file that we downloaded in the previous video. Once the ISO file is selected, click Next. On the next screen, VirtualBox provides an unattended installation option, allowing us to configure the user account in advance. Here, enter your preferred username and password. Make sure you choose a password that you'll remember because it will be required whenever administrator access is needed inside Linux Mint. First, choose the amount of RAM, also known as base memory. Next, choose the number of processor cores. Assigning 2 CPU cores is recommended for most systems. Now we need to create a virtual hard disk. This virtual disk acts as the storage drive for Linux Mint, where the operating system, installed applications, and your personal files will be stored. After reviewing the settings, click Finish. Our virtual machine has now been created successfully. Select the newly created virtual machine and click Start to power it on. VirtualBox will now boot from the Linux Mint ISO file. Within a few moments, the Linux Mint boot menu appears. Here you'll see several boot options. For this installation, simply select the first option, Start Linux Mint, and press Enter. Linux Mint will now load into the live environment. This may take a few moments depending on your computer's performance. Once the desktop appears, you'll notice an icon on the desktop labeled Install Linux Mint. Double-click this icon to start the installation process. The installer opens with the language selection screen. Choose your preferred language. I'll select English and then click Next. The next step is selecting the keyboard layout. In most cases, the default layout is already correct. I'll leave it as English US and click Next. The installer now asks whether we want to install multimedia codecs. These codecs allow Linux Mint to support additional audio and video formats, making media playback much easier after installation. I recommend leaving this option enabled. Click Next. Now we need to choose the installation type. Since this is a brand new virtual machine with an empty virtual hard disk, we'll keep the default option, Erase Disk and Install Linux Mint. Don't worry, this only affects the virtual disk created inside VirtualBox. It does not erase or modify any data on your actual computer. Click Install now and confirm the changes when prompted. Next, select your region or time zone. You can either click your location on the map or choose your city from the list. After selecting the correct time zone, click Continue. Now it's time to create your Linux user account. Enter your full name. Choose a username. Create a secure password. Then confirm the password by entering it again. You can also decide whether Linux Mint should log in automatically or require a password every time the system starts. For better security, I recommend selecting the option that requires a password to log in. Once all the information has been entered, click Continue. The installation process has now started. Depending on your computer's speed, this may take several minutes. While the installation is running, let's quickly understand what's happening in the background. The installer is copying all the operating system files from the ISO image to the virtual hard disk that we created earlier. It is creating the Linux file system, installing the Linux kernel, configuring the bootloader, setting up the Xfce desktop environment, creating your user account, applying the selected language and keyboard settings, installing the default applications, and preparing everything required for the operating system to boot independently. Once these tasks are complete, Linux Mint will be fully installed and ready to use without requiring the ISO file anymore. We'll wait until the installation finishes. After a few minutes, the installation completes successfully. A message now appears asking us to restart the system. Click Restart now. The virtual machine will restart and complete the final configuration. After rebooting, the Linux Mint login screen appears. Select your user account if necessary, enter the password you created during installation, and press Enter. Congratulations! You've successfully installed Linux Mint inside VirtualBox. This is the Linux Mint desktop, and your virtual machine is now ready to use. Before ending this video, let's quickly verify that everything is working correctly. Open the application menu and launch the terminal. The terminal allows us to interact directly with the Linux operating system using commands. First, let's verify the currently logged-in user. Type the following command. Ping Google. If you receive replies from Google, it confirms that the virtual machine is successfully connected to the internet. If you're using the regular ping command, you can stop at any time by pressing Ctrl+C on your keyboard. Everything is now working correctly. Linux Mint has been successfully installed, the user account is functioning properly, and the internet connection is active. In the next video, we'll take a complete tour of the Linux Mint desktop, explore its applications, learn basic Linux navigation, and understand the essential terminal commands that every beginner should know. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of this Linux Mint series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.